Arexon IX.
Well, welcome everyone to the first episode of Tales from Arexon IX. This is our first episode. I'm so happy everybody is here. Hopefully, everybody is equally as excited as I am to begin.
Absolutely.
I am greatly looking forward to the stuff that we get up to. Unless we have anything else that anyone wants to desperately say before we begin, I'm going to
Is
start.
Say Hello, Intrepid Adventurers trademarked? Can we do that?
It is not trademarked. I'm not going to steal it from Brennan, though, because...
I am. I'm his superior.
Okay.
Excelsior.
Can I get a hello from each one of our players? Just a quick hi or hello or present. Whatever you want to do.
Emily de la Fontaine de Fleur here.
Hey there.
Hey, Callie. Hey, G.
Hi.
Hello, Mario. Tara.
I'm Tara.
That is true. That you are Tara.
That's you.
But did I do it right?
You know, I didn't hear you super clearly the first time, but now I got you. So I think we are all set and ready to go.
Nailed it.
Okay. So, to set the scene, the hot sun glares down through the dusty landscape of the moon of Arexon IX. The beating rays radiating and roasting anything unshielded from its gaze. The rolling dunes and small oases of the continent of Muldrin, interrupted by dots of small villages and towns, stretches as far as the eye can see in every direction. But our main focus zooms in on the capital city of New Oxum, the center of bustling enterprise on the planet, and the central trade hub of all things Arexon. On this day, a large number of Oxumites have gathered in front of the New Oxum Civil Bank for the much-awaited annual Citizens Relief Lottery, a drawing of lots for the prize of 750 cards, which is about $150,000 in, our money. Still a persistently life-changing amount for a struggling denizen living in New Oxum. The entry fee is any donation in the past year made to the Green Bow, a charitable government nonprofit designed to stave off some of the unignorable poverty the city suffers, as does the planet writ large. A huge crowd of hundreds of people flock to the square in front of the bank, where a podium on a raised platform and a speaker system has been erected to see the announcement of the winner. On the podium stands a few figures, amongst which stands the mayor of New Oxum, who's an elderly gentleman wearing a fashionable bowler hat and a worn-looking brown suit. To his right, the Chancellor of Public Relations, Lloyd Elder, a proud-looking man with curly blonde hair and an almost clergy-like uniform that looks a little ridiculous in comparison to the surroundings, but which his offices deem absolutely necessary for the demands of his position. To the mayor's left stands Sheriff Wildheart, one of the heads of law enforcement for the boroughs of New Oxum. He stands in his double-breasted, brass-buttoned navy blue uniform with a slack sort of attention, his lasso rope and crossbow clipped to his belt in rough-worn holsters. This crowd has been milling around and standing for a few hours, waiting in sweaty anticipation for the festivities to begin. And the tangible excitement is palpable as each eager face betrays their guileless belief that surely, this time, it will be them that will have their luck change for the better. So, that is our scene, and let me kind of give you guys a little bit of detail about what's going on. So basically, it's a yearly celebration that kind of is almost like the lotto, essentially, but a lot of the poor and medium income people in New Oxum will be coming. If they have made any charitable donations in the past year, they'll definitely be there. But even people who are doing things like looking for work or they have product to sell, this is a huge, huge event that'll attract a huge amount of people, right? So there will be people hawking wares, selling food, trying to buy things. There will be people selling all kinds of services from textiles to, you know, different gun trappings and leather works and all kinds of things like that. People looking for maybe some kind of seedy mercenary work or any other kind of thing like that. But a lot of people are going to be in this area. So what I want to place in your guys' minds as players is just kind of think to yourself just for a little bit, maybe what your character's personal motivation would be for being there at the almost the center of the city square where this giant bank is erected. It's got huge stone pillars, lots of important people, lots of hustle and bustle. There's plenty of businesses around, and it's in this huge square that's kind of like hemmed in on all sides by businesses and alleyways and all sorts of stuff. But there's kind of a big pit recess area, almost like an amphitheater that faces the podium that the mayor and his entourage is up on. So just as I kind of place that in your mind, I want you guys to have that as we move forward a little bit. But in terms of action, the mayor begins to hem and haw and tap the microphone, and there's a little bit of feedback as his you know naivete towards technology reveals itself, and he winces a little bit. Oh, you know does his little doddering little bit he does being a little old man running a huge city. But as we kind of pan around, um, in the faces of this huge, huge crowd, there's some other figures in this hustle and bustle that could be lost, but we want to focus in on one. There's a tall, lean figure standing in the shadows, all the way across the street from the amphitheater, from the crowd's commotion, probably, 30 yards away or so, just observing silently. And from the alley next to him, a huge dryalid, which is a bird like 8-foot tall creature with a thick neck, kind of soundlessly pads forward and kind of just gazes ahead right next to him. This creature that has this thick neck and just kind of an unworldly alien head, but would be common and not, like scary or anything to anybody who lives on Arexon, but still kind of an intimidating beast. It kind of leans over and gently nudges this silent figure with a little bump on its muzzle. David, would you mind introducing your character for us?
So, this is going to be Heron. He is a nomad. He is someone who has made a life for himself, serving as a independent contractor, moving people from city to city when they need to travel through the wastes. And he has not entered the lottery himself, but he's waiting to see who the winner is, knowing that there's probably some money and maybe something else coming his way when they present themselves.
Okay. Very cool. Very, very cool. All right. So, as how do you pronounce your name? Because you did change the pronunciation since we last talked about it. How do you want us to say it?
We're gonna say Heron. He doesn't know how to
Heron?
read.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
how this is how the story was told to him.
All right. All right.
This character from the old world, who ferried people from the living to the dead, and this is kind of how he sees himself, moving people from one town to another across this river of sand.
Okay. Okay. And does your dryalid have a name?
My Dryland's name is Styx, which is the
Okay.
river
Very
that
cool.
it moves across.
Very cool. All right. Awesome. Okay, so as the mayor kind of begins his little speech with, and today in the city of New Oxum, and, does the whole kind of preamble to what the festivities are going to be. And he kind of has some anecdotes about the bounty of the earth is provided, general nonsense about, how great the city is and whatever. Heron is kind of not really present for the speeches. He's more here for the festivities and the stuff that happens afterward. But he's reminded of one of the last times he regretted traveling to New Oxum. And we're transported back into the past with a bit of a whoosh into Heron's memories. So the wind blows hot on your face as you approach the edge of a dusty plot in the dunes several miles outside of New Oxum. Your companion, although his friendly demeanor would compel him to call you a friend, crouches at the end of a marked plot. He picks up a handful of grainy soil, letting it fall from his hands. He stands, dusting off his knees, peering into the glare of the horizon. This is it. This is what I have planned. The biggest general store and trading post outside of New City. He kicks at a rock, sending it down the steep slope of the dune to the side of you, cascading several hundred feet down into the sand, and snaps the smart suspenders across his shoulders. His name is Neil, and he's speaking of his storefront concept he's come to show you. The genius idea he cooked up to bring a new store to the outskirts of town, to redirect business from the inner city trading posts. Well, with a location like this, I'll be right in line with the new railway. Plus, I can snag any peddlers or merchants that are desperate to unload their wares. Entice them in with a pitcher of cool water, perhaps? He takes a swig from a water canteen from his belt and casts a squinting gaze back towards Oxum. Your mount, a fiercely intelligent drylid, named Styx, stands in bored reverie, having carried you two a fair distance to look at a square of empty sand. Besides, it's not like those idiots have anything better to offer than what I can sell from off-world, so I can undercut them like a mofo. This location will be more of a jumping-off point, as it were, to receive goods. With the grant I've gotten from my uncle's company, I'm planning on at least 4 or 5 or more of these by next spring. But I need someone who knows the lay of the land and how to properly separate the goods we want from these wilderness inbreds. At this statement, Neil grins and offers you the canteen. You look at him with an air of indifference, but you take the canteen, surveying the landscape around you by force of ritualistic habit. You grasp it in your hands, but as he lets it go, you feel a slight hesitancy in his grasp, as if he's almost reconsidering it, offering it to you. By second nature, you tug the water jug out of his almost unwilling hand and raise it to your lips. But as you do so, your unexpected motion throws him off of his balance, and Neil slightly stumbles back through the sand, stepping on a rock like the one he had kicked earlier. He flails, trying not to fall ungracefully onto the sandy floor, but just as he's almost regained his balance, his ornamental spurs trip him up, and he stumbles backwards several paces, sending him shooting down the slope of a dune a dozen feet away. You dash forward to the edge to see him spinning head over tail down the sandy hill, and his shrieks muffled by a mouthful of desert dirt. And all at once his body comes to a stop at the bottom of the hill, crooked in angles it wasn't before, and fallen in a kind of ragdoll way. You peer down the hundreds of feet of dune to see him lying there, limbs akimbo at the crook of 2 large hills. You look back at Styx, mental calculus slightly stirring to see what kind of mechanical conundrum it would be to extricate him, live or dead, from the precarious position he's now in. Styx makes gentle eye contact with you, sensing the possibility of action. You turn back towards the steep slope, grinding your foot into the treacherous ground and shade your eyes. The sun is setting, and it's getting quite dangerous to be out. You warned him you would only have less than an hour to look at the disappointing mystery he was going to show you. A far cry from the botany and horticulture with which you had initially broached conversation. A faint, pained moaning emanates from the bottom of the slope. Alive, then. Your fingers gently run over the length of rope hung onto your belt. And all at once, a specter of snap judgment enters your mind, the greater good. The haunting reaper that dogs the heels of every living thing on Arexon. You kneel down, looking closely at the condition of the crumpled thing at the foot of the hill. Hesitation only plagues your decision for a moment, and in the wild, a second can be the difference between life and death. You whistle a shrill tone with your fingers, beckoning sticks to your side at the brim of the dune. You stand, your choice already determined. Saving Neil would be a charitable act, almost certainly something that would place him in your debt. But the price would be that Arexon would suffer itself yet another sponge, a drain on the resources of a planet whose ecosystem already is held in a fragile balance. You do a short hop and mount your drylid, turning away from the dune. And as you begin moving, the incoherent wails from the crevasse grow louder, and then all of a sudden are lost among the howling of the desert wind. You ride off towards New Oxum with the sun at your back and take a swig of the canteen still open in your hand. So, David, that is your character. He's standing in thought, kind of a little farther away from the action. Is there anything that you think he would be thinking about or doing while he's in New Oxum?
Well, on account of this great gathering of people who are eager to get their hands on some money, he's taking a look out along the crowd to see, uh, kind of weigh out what kind of people are here. Presumably, he's seeing a lot of the poor and needy who really aren't the kind of people he's looking for. He's looking to see the kind of person who would have tried to rig this game in their favor to get more than they already have, which is more than other people had to start with.
Okay.
And so he's trying to spot out that kind of person.
So he's surveying the scene. He's looking for those people.
He's looking for the winner.
All right. Okay. So as he's thinking about that, the mayor is, continuing on with his, talking and stuff like that. And then he begins to introduce some other speakers and stuff like that. And the first person to come up and speak is the head of the foundry in New Oxum, who kind of heads up all of the machining of parts and construction of new buildings. And he begins to talk about the superiority of Oxum manufacturing and their steel. And he, you know, loads, all of the reputation of New Oxum and everything that they've built. And he cites, the railways and all of the other things that have made the prospering of the rest of the planet of Erixon possible. And he trails it all back through his speech to the integrity of the manufacturing and the creations of New Oxum's engineers. And at the same time, he kind of subtly starts talking down and denigrating, and he knows what it's going to be like a crowd winning move to denigrate the other continents manufacturing and their artisanship and their crafts, and he's talking about Dyrecia, which is the continent to the east, and Caproon, which is the continent to the west. And as he begins to kind of wax philosophical about the superior merits of New Oxum um, guildsmanship and all of the, rote mechanics and the degree to which they're uh just all of the things that they've done have basically built this world that everyone has come to know as Erexon, while simultaneously talking down at and appealing to the crowd and basically talking shit about uh Caproon and Dyresha. There is a young woman in the crowd with a large toolbox on her back and kind of a glint in her eye as he says this stuff. Callie, would you mind introducing your character for us?
So Emily kind of huffs and like blows a little wisp of azure blue hair out of her face while she's listening to this and is kind of like shaking her head. And as she does so, the many tools that adorn her outfit, a very mechanically inclined outfit, a jumpsuit with a lot of belts and straps and little tools for all sorts of little things, kind of jingles a bit. And she kind of mutters to herself, all y'all's fancy shit. It's got all this flair and ain't got no function to it. Just complaining back, knowing she couldn't just walk up there and talk circles around him, which she knows that she could. She has very like shimmering green eyes. She's kind of on the small side, around like 5'7", 5'8" or so. And she has a kind of strange, a little bit how would you describe it? Like stiff demeanor, but you can tell in her eyes there are a billion little gears turning. Just a mind that is ever in thought.
Okay. She's thinking about what he's saying. Okay.
Pissed off about what he's saying. Taking it very personally.
Yeah, she's pissed off because this guy is intentionally talking.
Y'all
talking
shit
smack
flies
about
down river to
something.
Caproon, and I managed to piece it together to make something that halfway resembles something functional, and you're going to sit here and say this nonsense to me.
And she is from Caproon. Is that right?
Not originally from Caproon. She's originally from. It's her and her two parents that are on world. Her parents are kind of like farmers up north. But she, as an 18-year-old prodigal genius in mechanicking and all things mechanical, made her way to Caproon to seek work when she was a teenager, so that she could save up money to buy 3 of these tickets that are being given away. So that she and her family can get off of planet. And she's here at this little festival, just kind of vainly hoping that, like, maybe the cost of one of them is going to just magically disappear. Because, she's not really counting on it. But, if you win a ticket for free, that's 1/3 of the effort you don't got to expend. That's 2/3 more effort you can spend doing other things. So it's just a mathematics thing to me.
That is true. She's doing the math. However, I will
Math ain't
point
in my
out
favor, though.
750 cards is not nearly enough for her to buy her way onto the yearly passage that will take her off of the planet. But $150,000, 750 cards, definitely a huge chunk of what she is intending to make up.
And all
For
that she has
sure.
been doing with her life this entire time, since she set out for Caproon when she was about 12 or 13, is just finding the way to get those goddamn cards.
It's all about the cards. But as she is kind of mentally arguing with this rough and tumble guy in some coveralls who's talking smack about the people that she knows and stuff like that, um things that are like turning over in her head and stuff like that, is this is not the first time that she has kind of been plagued with the bad reputation of Caproon's workmanship. And her mind kind of swirls backwards in the past, kind of swallowed up by memories to a different time. So we're absorbing her memories and listening in to an account inside of what she remembers. So Emily, You awake with a start in a bed. Red lights, dampening the harsh sensation of being reaccustomed to light. Your senses seem to recollect themselves one at a time. First, your vision. Blurry at first, taking in the small room the cot you're laying in occupies, which is lit by a few small lanterns and some other things. Your smell is the next thing to return to you, the distinct scent of sulfur and iron that you eventually detect is coming from you that fills kind of the space around you. And the iron smell of blood in your passageways. The sensation of touch comes back, and the rough fabric of bandages that are swaddling you from head to toe becoming increasingly itchy and uncomfortable on your skin. The tongue in your mouth is dry and like a lump in your throat, but after several dry swallows, the taste of coolant and burnt hair and fabric kind of fill your mouth, and the cacophony of unpleasant sensations kind of make you wish you had stayed asleep. The door to the room you're in opens, and your final sense returns, which is hearing. And all at once, you realize your ears are ringing, which is a loud, almost antagonistic tone, like the pealing of a bell that just never drops off and ends. It's just one constant tone. The latching on the door is ever so soft, but the gentle voice of the spectacled elderly man that walks to your bed is like thunderclaps in the silence that had followed. And he says, "Emily! Oh, Emily, you're awake. We thought we'd lost you too." And you gaze up at his face, and a few moments pass before you recognize him as your childhood doctor, Mr. Bolster. You slowly kind of blink and readjust your eyes to the light to focus on his face, and he gingerly kind of smiles and pats your hair as though you were still the small child he used to know, and says, "There, there. No, there, my dear. No need to talk. You've been through enough, and you need your rest." And your throat kind of struggles to operate and starting to remember its functions as though it had forgotten to speak. And the words that come out are just kind of a jumbled mess of tones and pain consonants. You, you're, you're very injured, my girl. I don't think that you need to be talking right now. We don't need to talk about it at the moment. We just need to focus on getting you better for now. We'll talk about the accident later. And at the word, when he says accident, you're suddenly on the ship and you're gasping for air, and suddenly insistent beeping cuts through the hazy ship's interior as you look around, and control panels are lighting up with red and yellow, and the tolling sound of a klaxon kind of blasts out of nearby speakers, hurting your ears. And you clamber down a shuttle ladder and reach for a fire extinguisher, looking for the source of all this smoke that's filling the hallways. And you round the corner of a corridor to a chamber that's just filled with smoke, and you pull the pin, and your eyes sting, and water comes out, and you pull the trigger, and you point the nozzle at the flame that you can just barely see erupting from a fuse box on the far wall, and you squeeze at the fire extinguisher, expecting in the next moment that fire will be out, and instead of a jetting spray of suppressant to come out and douse the fire, just a solid sludge kind of starts to ooze out of the fire extinguisher and kind of trails on the floor. You shriek with frustration, you throw it on the floor, and right as you do that, some screaming and shouts are heard several floors above you on the upper decks. "Emily, we need you to stabilize the thrusters, or we are not going to make it to first stage." And there's a panic in that voice above you that instills adrenaline, which forces you to move even faster than you were before. And all of a sudden, you're back. You're sitting on that cot with Dr. Bolster, and you're pushing yourself upwards to your feet into a sitting position. And he protests, Imini, no, you can't walk. Your stitches have only just set. You'll tear yourself open. Please, go sit down. But you pay him no mind, and you shift a couple steps onto your feet, and that first step is just a searing pain that goes all the way through your body, and you can hear shouting voices outside, and you struggle to push yourself for another step, another one, another two. You make it all the way to the door of the room, and when you place your hand on the door, another just jolt of pain just goes directly through your spine, and you can feel it in your skull. And all of a sudden your vision just goes black again, and you're back on the ship. You're racing around another corner in a hallway, down into a hatch. A panel underneath it is exposed with dusty hoses and wires that are starting to hiss and whine. And you reach onto your back and you pull out a breaker bar set. You tighten a hose here, strip a wire, reattach one, use your soldering kit. And the panel calms for a minute, and for a moment, just a moment, the craft shuddering pauses. But that mere second of peace is shattered by another noise, which is wrenching metal, just that deep tone when some huge piece of structural metal is just starting to lose its integrity. So you immediately know where it's coming from, and you rush to the hydraulics room, and you open the door with a rotating hatch, and you open it, and you find oil is just everywhere. It's starting to flood the room, and there's a jammed piston that's almost wrenching itself out as the whole mechanism starts to creak and groan with a terminal kind of sound. And your mind and your technical skills immediately assess the situation, like right away, in a quick second, even before your limbic system and your instincts kick in. And those instincts tell you run, duck, cover, hide, brace. And before you can react, in a horrible, wrenching, tearing sound of metal and glass and all the other materials crunching and warping, you dash back into the hallway, the only thing that you can do, to be thrown into the ceiling of the shuttle. And with a huge crunch, all of the lights go out and consciousness escapes you again. And you open your eyes again to Dr. Bolster standing with you at the doorway, and your arm is around his neck, and he's supporting you. And he looks at you with soft eyes as your exhales become kind of labored and heavy. He can tell that this is really strenuous for you. And he looks towards the door handle, and he kind of just gives into the fact that you are too stubborn not to go sit down. You're not going to stop. So he's just helping you. And so you weakly twist the handle for the door, and as it swings open, you see the hazy expanse on Caproon. And in the clearing in front of Dr. Bolster's home, several men are shouting between each other as they load up wagons and grab supplies and try to get any kind of steeds they can and fill sacks up with sand and buckets with water. And a powered wagon kind of sputters into the clearing and swings past to make a turn, and the back of it faces the open door to reveal the cargo bed with a bunch of men that just look tired, and they're wearing hazmat suits, and they're sitting on the benches on the outside of the truck, and in the middle there's just a pile of charred bodies that are just they're emitting smoke. And you the sound that comes out of your mouth is just uncontrollable. It just kind of whooshes out of you. Your breath is just all taken out of your lungs. and a few of the men jump out of the back of the wagon and start unloading these corpses. And Dr. Bolster kind of closes the door, and you step backwards, still stunned, as that image of bodies is still superimposed in your mind. And he lays you back onto the cot and places a cool cloth on your head to ease some of your fever. Child, I swear all above, you need rest. That crash wasn't your fault, and you need sleep. As the ceiling of the room begins to spin, those words of your fault, echo in your mind as you lose consciousness again. So, with that on Imani's mind, as this foundry master is busy just completely lambasting all of Caproon's workmanships, what do you think Imani is doing in the crowd right now? Why is she listening to these speeches? Why didn't she come later?
Probably just not being able to help herself. Just kind of wanting to come and be around people. Kind of also probably looking for situations kind of like this. As she's listening to it, she does kind of turn her attention away, and she looks around at, like, I'm imagining it's kind of like it's like one of those really small scale fairs. Like, they have these cheap little rides set up, like little roller coasters that don't like go anywhere. They're just like maybe 60-foot long, 60-foot diameter, little like kids coasters. And she slowly turns her attention away from the man shit talking and is like, I gotta distract myself. I gotta go do something. She sees one of these contraptions broken down with one of the attendants like kind of banging on a console, and right next to it is a stand selling beer. And so she's like, don't mind if I do, and moseys over and grabs a beer and then goes over to help the guy to fix his little roller coaster problem.
Okay. So she's helping with this, broken down, kind of stuttering ride, but she can still hear the echoes of what this guy is saying because it's being broadcast through a speaker system. So she's right in the vicinity, but she's distracting herself from the words because she's there for a reason.
Skate Shug, you don't know what you're doing. I'll have this fixed up. Do you have any 3-prong port jacks?
The ride attendant is just this 16-year-old scruffy looking guy who literally is just paid to stand there and press buttons, and he looks at you as
Diamoretic 3-prong drives. Do you have any?
you're speaking an alien language to this guy.
Get out of the way, you're useless. And I just pull down a panel and I just start like wrenching, and I'm like spinning like wrenches around my fingers and stuff. Like,
Beautiful. So Imani is starting to go to work on this ride, and within just a few moments, it starts kind of, uh, it starts back up, and her latent mechanical abilities are kind of already
she
getting
pats him on the shoulder and goes,
start.
"It's 3 times as fast now," and then walks off sipping her beer.
He just kind of shrugs a little bit, and he's not super worried, but it sounds kind of dangerous. I don't think he's very concerned. He's not paid to think. And as this ride begins to kind of slowly lurch back into motion again after Imani has, worked her magic on it.
As she walks away, she just hears children start screaming behind her,
there's
and
just,
like,
yeah, there's just children just starting to slowly lose their grip, and one of them just starts to fly off. And as this is happening, the Foundry Master finishes his shit talking abilities, and he uh, steps off and kind of signs off to some, a smattering of applause. People appreciate, big talk about, New Oxum. That's basically all these speeches are going to be, is ending up to talk up all the different facets of why our city is better than everybody else's city, and so on and so forth. But the next guy to step up is kind of a suave, really well-dressed gentleman, and he has like slick-backed, uh, you know, just slick-back dark hair, kind of in almost I would say like almost like an old-fashioned haircut, almost uh like Pride and Prejudice kind of like period, you know, suave, debonair, main character kind of haircut. And he's got like a sky blue waistcoat and he carries a cane. He doesn't wear a top hat, but he's got almost the kind of vibe that he would be the kind of person to wear a top hat if it already wasn't an insanely hot planet. And you can tell he's got like a glistening like bead of sweat. He's not used to the landscape that Arexon has, and he keeps dabbing his forehead with a little handkerchief. But he's smiling and he's kind of jovial, and he gets up and he starts a very saucy speech, very filled with double entendres and kind of just like funny, if a little bit like racy jokes almost. And he talks about the excellent of Oxum's adult establishments, and he talks about them and compares them basically only to the ones on Raythenor. And there's some kind of like rude laughing as people are like giggling at his rude jokes. And his speech kind of gets cut short, and the uh chancellor elder kind of like waves him off of the stage and cuts him off and says that was absolutely inappropriate and that was not sanctioned. Absolutely not. Please continue with the speeches and stop laughing. And it doesn't really do anything, but the brief little speech that he was able to give definitely outed that guy as a Raythenorian. He is an off-worlder. He's in the crowd, getting slapped on the back, and his hand gets shaken and stuff like that. But uh, he still has not completely bought his way into Ericson society, even though people are appreciating the crude nature of his jokes and things like that. They know he's an outsider. But just a short distance away from the podium, there is a small, not a pavilion, but almost like a small table with a shaded umbrella. And under it, there is a beautiful woman with fiery red hair and kind of dressed in genteel kind of just kind of like more dignified dress than the rest of the crowd might be. Just a little bit more high society, but still not super fancy, a little bit plain, but also just nicer quality clothes. Um and she just kind of like watches as this guy gets kind of shooed off stage by the chancellor. And she kind of just looks on as this off-worlder kind of like steps off of the stage. Tara, would you mind introducing your character to us?
First, am I sitting escorting a man with a gray curly mustache? Yes or no? Am I by myself?
That is up to you.
Well, let's go with I'm alone for now.
All right.
Celine would definitely attend a public event of this size regardless. But there's probably about two types of people in the crowd. There's the the folks who are waiting to see how their lottery tickets pan out, and then there is maybe the upper class who are there for the event and who are there to see the disappointed poor people. So that's largely her crowd of marks. She's not really there for the lottery today. Um,
Okay. Very cool. What did you say her name? I don't know if you did.
Celine.
Awesome, Celine. Okay. So, Celine is kind of sitting by herself under this shaded umbrella listening to the speeches. Um, but with the shooing off of, this kind of this innuendo laden, not really a gentleman, but just kind of the jovial figure that gets shooed off of the stage. It reminds her that it's been a while since Celine has seen another off-worlder just, as garish as this guy was. Not most off-worlders tend to uh, either kind of disguise that they're off-world, that they're from the larger planet of Raythenor, or they tend to uh, kind of embrace it a little bit, as this guy kind of does, and kind of make the most of how ridiculous they kind of seem um, on the planet, compared to kind of basically the poverty stricken masses that kind of occupy the rest of this planet. So um that's what kind of churns a little bit in Celine's mind, and she remembers uh kind of the last time that she had the displeasure of enjoying somebody's company, as probably as maybe not inappropriate, but possibly unpleasant as as this unnamed gentleman. So for Celine, when she's thinking back, she's on an airship. She's off world. She's on Raythenor. She's sitting in a bar, which is quite deserted. And she twirls a martini olive with a small toothpick around the rim of her glass. And the cityscape of Raythenor's capital, which is Verisgrad, slowly kind of drifts past outside the window. And a young couple dressed in swank clothes kind of walk through the room, headed to an event or some other goings on, kind of on a different part of the ship. You give out a long, weary exhale, just biding your time until you have or you see what you're waiting for. A gentle clearing of the throat that's somewhere behind you causes your eyes to dart up from your drink. And you see, in the reflection of a shiny decorative plaque above the barkeep station, is standing behind you an exceedingly tall, pale man with coiffed dark hair. And your heels push the stool you're sitting on to kind of swivel halfway, and you meet his eyes, which are about a foot higher than yours. He's wearing a genteel white tuxedo with pretty wide shoulders to accommodate how big he is. And he's got coattails and kind of white gloves, which is a common uniform for a revelry ship that you're riding on of this caliber. And he gives the appearance of a manservant, or maybe a head butler, maybe slightly higher in station than a normal butler. And he lifts his coattails up and sits down close to you, just with one stool in between you. And he beckons the barkeep and orders a cocktail wordlessly by pointing at the menu item he wants. And when the barkeep turns back to make his drink, he reaches inside his breast pocket and produces a small envelope and places it silently in front of you. The energy kind of changes, and you can feel both this gentleman and the bartender are both paying attention to what you're doing in their own ways. So you take a small sip of your martini and you slit open the package and you place the envelope back onto the bar, which he gingerly kind of removes and he puts back into his coat pocket. And your gloves muffle the sensation of touching the paper, but mostly you're concerned with the words that kind of glare at you from the page. And written on it is a single name written on there in calligraphy, along with a highly detailed sketch of a young man. And it says Jarvis Hardwell. And you recognize the sketch as the man who just walked through the room just a few moments ago with a young woman. And beneath his name, it says a date and a time. It says by 7:30 p.m. tonight. And you scan the paper for a few seconds more, just kind of absorbing all of the details you can possibly ascertain from this small note. And the large man right next to you, he kind of pulls a clove cigarette out of his jacket pocket as the barkeep turns to hand him his drink. And he kind of pats his pockets looking for a lighter with the clove in his mouth, just kind of looking for something to light it with. And the barkeep notices this and he ducks under the bar to grab what is, you're assuming, is just a lighter. But in a single, quick, fluid moment, the man reaches his fingertip all the way across that empty stool next to the letter that you're holding in your fingers, and a tiny flame conjures from his fingertip, and the letter instantly catches flame, and with an instantaneous whoosh, the entire paper combusts, leaving no ash or flame or smoke, only the residual puff of heat that kind of just dissipates into the air. And the bartender quickly stands up with an ignited lighter in his hand, and the gentleman leans in to puff his clove a few times on the open flame. And the bartender turns around again, and the gentleman takes a single long, laborious drag on his clove, and he just kind of lets the spice smoke linger as he slowly exhales it above his head, which is far, far above everybody else's airspace, in a kind of a polite gesture. And he turns to you, Celine, and he places his hand on the nape of your neck in an affectionate gesture, and he speaks for the first time, but his voice is anything but welcoming, but instead deep and menacing.
Tonight, we expect results, so I would think twice before disappointing us.
And his index finger and thumb kind of pinch at the base of your neck. Now you can tell he's barely exerting any pressure. The strength in just his fingers alone could easily snap your spine. And there's a little small, uncontrollable shiver that grows through you just a little bit. And as he feels that, he smiles as if to reassure you and stands up. He gives a short bow to you and to the bartender to excuse himself. And he removes his wallet from his pocket and places a crisp $100 Varisian note on the bar, to which the barkeep, who's polishing a glass, just kind of nods and thanks him. And as he exits the airship's bar, two Verisgrad officers in servo mail armor are standing outside of the door of the bar as the opaque glass kind of opens in front of him of the door. And one of them, a mustachioed man with a tall ornamental helmet and a long rifle mounted to his back, says,
We've been looking for you.
"We need you to come with." But the only thing you hear next from the bar, about 10 feet away, and you're sure the bartender did not notice at all, is kind of a sickening crunch as the gentleman flicks the Adam's apple of both of the officers with both of his hands, just with a solid. And right where their armor stops at the collarbone, he immediately shatters both of their tracheas outside of the door of the room, and then turns slowly and manually closes the door. And you can see through the frosted glass as he steps over their bodies, as they're kind of shuddering on the ground, and kind of disappears through the opposite door. And after the initial shock of this action kind of subsides after a few seconds, Celine, you quickly realize this was a move to force you into action because you can't stay in this area now where there's two mangled Ferrisgrad policemen, essentially. So you get up from the bar and you start preparing to, get everything going and do things like that. And as you stand up, you see the gentleman's wallet is fallen underneath the bar stools after he took it out. He missed it, his breast pocket when he was putting it back. And with kind of a quick natural move, you gracefully just kind of stoop to the ground and slip it deftly, like right into your little bodice where it's hidden. And you just kind of think to yourself, oh, just desserts. Um, but there's no time for dallying whatsoever because you have a job to do and a deadline to do it by. And that's what Celine is recalling, at least when she thinks of other off-worlders. As she kind of comes back to the present from her memories. Tara, what is Celine doing as she kind of surveys all of the people on the podium and the all of the numerous events that are happening around this kind of happening that's going on?
Um, Mostly it's a lot of searching, eye contact, um, looking for a reaction from somebody in the crowd that she can that she's getting a feel for, more or less.
Okay. Okay. All right. Does she want to do anything or just continue
Uh,
listening?
it's mostly patient listening and sticking her chest out.
Okay, understood. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
All right. So she's there.
but not really paying attention to the stage.
Yes, not a lot of people are. There's nothing important that's happening essentially. Okay, so Celine is sitting kind of solo, just surveying the crowd, not super interested, a little, you know, kind of an effervescent presence in the midst of the masses that are kind of like all packed together, just trying to get as close to the stage as possible so they can see the mayor as up close as they can, and maybe somehow that'll curry some kind of favor, maybe is what they're thinking. And after the chancellor kind of dismisses the uh Raythenorian from the stage after his little mishap, he kind of ushers on this matronly kind of older looking woman. And most people who are from Ericson would recognize her little uniform as from the hospital, but more specifically, she's from the New Oxum Hospital. Um, and she kind of steps up to the stage and does her uh, little setup and things like that. And she's very cute, little cute old lady, stuff like that. And she kind of, oh, hello, and she begins her little talk. It's not fancy. There's no flowery words, but she kind of talks about you know the essence of time, and the moments that we use are the most valuable of all, and we must make precious use of everything that we have. And she kind of says her little piece and talks about how New Oxum is kind of ushering in an age of the best times, both with advancements in new medical technology, and kind of gives a little soft clap to the mayor for some sort of political work for expanding medical care for low income people or some other political whatever she is required to do. Um, but with the talk about time and making the most of it. Um, there is a thin figure standing kind of not in the midst of the crowd, but I'd say kind of towards the back. But he's still watching the stage. Um, but he's got a little bit of a head covering and stuff like that. But just kind of mostly a nondescript kind of guy. Um, just standing there listening. Mario, would you care to introduce your character?
I would care. I would care
You
very
would care.
much. I love this
Right.
character.
All
Um,
right.
my character, he goes by Bones because he's a bag of bones. He's this. You might be hiding it right now in this crowd, not wanting to stick out, but he's an emaciated, plain-looking guy, as average as can come, or as average as they come. He is probably. I'm not sure if he knew that this was going to be going on, or if he just kind of instinctively headed towards a place where there was going to be a crowd of people where he could blend into. But if you were to catch a glimpse of him head on, he would have the most a face so unremarkable and average that it would be remarkable how average it is.
Just
Uh,
the most generic person you could possibly think of.
the most NPC looking guy, just ridiculous. He's a living stock image. Uh,
Okay.
the
That's
only thing
awesome.
distinct about him being his silver hair and his gray eyes, and
Okay.
a look of deep discontent.
The
Deep
barbecue shoes
discontent.
of
Okay.
people.
Yes.
So, Bones, the thin, raggedy figure standing at the back of the crowd. He wasn't always the way that he is now. But he did used to not have as much time on his hands as he does now. And now we swirl back to his memories and what this reminds him of. So, Bones, you wipe the sweat from your forehead, and the glistening on your hand kind of reflects all the hours of waiting you've done in this alleyway that you're in. You're just hoping for some sign of change. So you peek out and you only show your face for just a second. And there's thugs that you hope to avoid, but they're still standing outside of the general store just across the street, and they are guaranteed to spot you if you decide to leave this alleyway. So you pull back into the alleyway and kind of sigh heavily as the weariness of waiting just in this one spot starts to kind of sink your spirits even further. Your slight frame kind of betrays a subtle endurance, one of waiting and just of patience. And you rest your head against the abrasive brick wall and close your eyes and try to will the ruffians that are, just across the street a very merry go away and leave me alone. And you keep your eyes closed for a second longer as if you were making a wish for it to come true. Your eyes spring open with a start. You realize that you fell asleep, and the voice you hear above your face is not a friendly one. Well, hello, sweetheart. And one of the goons says that as you feel a swift kick to your ribs, and all the air whooshes out of you as the foot collides with your rib cage and then with your lungs. Your arms kind of fly up to protect your face as multiple blows start pummeling down and hitting your face and your arms and your chest. And each hit comes with this resounding just thud, which is atypical of such a wiry, thin frame, as new bruises, welts, and, crunches start to kind of form on your body as you shield yourself from these three thugs that are assailing you. And in an instant, the large one, who's obviously the leader of the group, kind of drags you up by the front of your shirt, and he spits directly into your eyes. Mr. Bingley says it's high time you paid your dues. And while saying this, he hits you twice, just with two firm knees directly back into your stomach again. And you just kind of double over in pain, but you're still held up by his grasp on your shirt, the front of your shirt. And your instincts are just screaming, run! You have to hide, you have to run away, you have to get away from this. But you know all of your usual tactics of staying in the shadows and hiding and avoiding have run their course. And suddenly, in a flash of movement, you slam your head against the leader's face, and a satisfying just crunch of his nose makes him stumble back and howl and clutch, the mid part of his face, just bleeding profusely as the other two kind of close in to react. And suddenly you're a whirlwind of just blind fists. You're not even looking. There's dust flying everywhere. And you see the face of the ringleader. His name is Hemmels, as he lands one solid punch on your jaw while you're kicking one of the other men, and your vision just kind of goes black. And you wake up again, suddenly, with a jolt, exhaustion temporarily letting go of you as your consciousness regains control of your body. And as your vision kind of teeters back into view and your neck pulls itself forward from leaning back, you kind of look down and you see the three battered bodies of all of these thugs just kind of limp on the ground. They're all unconscious. And your body is holding itself up just through sheer will. It stands in kind of a Pyrrhic victory as the muscles seem to just hang off of your frame. They're just too weak to move themselves in unison to move you forward. And as dusk begins to approach, you lurch forward to catch yourself from falling backwards and losing your balance. And all of a sudden, you're in motion, you're walking, trudging away from the scene as quickly as your debilitated muscles will take you away from it. You take your hat off and kind of wipe your forehead and slide it over your face to wipe away some of the blood and hide some salty droplets coming out of your eyes, and resetting the appearance a little bit of your bruises and the swollen patches to a little bit less gruesome of a visage. You had hoped to stay in this town by hiding, but it seems your time has run out, as it always had. And the little voice in your head says, gotta keep moving. And with that, Bones is back in the crowd, listening half heartedly, maybe to the speeches, but mostly thinking about the time he has and calculating in his head what kind of things he would need to do to get out of this situation. What do you think Bones is doing here now after he's heard a few of these speeches and things like that, Mario?
Bones is paying very close attention to how different groups of people are reacting to the different speakers. Just trying to get a general vibe check on who to watch out for, who are the kind of people that he probably wants to avoid for as long as possible. Um, and just keeping tabs on the general like sentiment of this town. Are the people here generally helpful? Are they selfish? Are they beaten down? Are they like me? Are they like Bones, rather?
So from what Bones can tell, after how much time do you think he spent listening to this? Did he just get there?
He's probably been here all day and just lost track of time, and then suddenly a lot of people started showing up.
Okay, so if he's been there all day, what he has probably noticed is that there's kind of a little bit of a divide. There's something of like a little bit of a mosh pit, maybe in the middle of the amphitheater crowd. There's some a little bit of revelry. Some people brought in some some outside alcohol other than the vendors that are, kind of there. So people are maybe getting a little bit raucous. The people on the outer edges of the crowd kind of like filter in and out. They're mostly there to just kind of like step to the back and maybe listen to see if there's anything interesting being said. And usually they'll stay for a few minutes and then just kind of leave. There's not a whole lot to hold them there if all they're doing is passing by and listening to the speeches. The people in the very front of the crowd, like I mentioned a little bit before, these are like these people that are just wrapped in attention. Maybe they just have some kind of hero worship for the mayor or chancellor elder or Sheriff Wildheart or who knows. But these people are like they've been hanging on just every single word, and it doesn't matter who has been speaking, but they are just like very much involved um, in what's going on. But as Bones is kind of still surveying this crowd and, aptly observing all of the different movements of the crowd and people outside of it and the different vendors and people they might be related to and things like that and differentials and all of these other things he's considering. The chancellor steps forward after the hospital lady finishes her speech, and Chancellor Elder steps forward, and one of the flying drones that he controls that he's been using throughout the day to kind of maybe maneuver the crowd a little bit, form boundaries. He uses it to, if people are getting too close to the stage, they kind of like buzz over and things like that. But this one, he positions one directly in front of the podium, and it kind of emits this low buzzing noise, and it has a screen as it begins to transmit to him what is almost as like definitely a long-winded, just like scripted speech. And he begins to wax all about the history of the city and go into all of this detail about um, the founders and who started it and why New Oxum was chosen to be the capital of Arexon over all of the other cities. He's got this whole rigmarole plan. So he's going through a very um, kind of politically laden speech. Um, and we see while he's speaking, there's a bistro that's adjacent to the courtyard off to the side. It's about 10 yards away from the podium, kind of past there's like a little barricade, but it's about 10 yards away. There's a kind of lackadaisical, gruff looking man sitting at a table, um, kind of idly sitting and enjoying a beverage from one of the local cafeterias, but it doesn't seem that he's paying all that much attention. He's drinking out of a copper mug. He seems to be, you know, for the all intents and purposes, just kind of there to and be there for the food, not really anything for the speeches. Um, for anyone else that would be watching, he would be the least interested person basically present for the festivities because everyone else who is there is either engaged in some kind of activity or they're on a ride or they're buying something or they're listening to the speeches or they're selling something or they're trying to hawk wares or like do whatever that they're doing. They're actively engaged in something. But this guy is not really doing anything. Unbeknownst to everyone else, he is very keenly listening to the speeches, but especially the one from the chancellor. And he can hear everything that's going on. G, could you introduce your character for us?
The Valdez remembers a time when he was tasked with killing this very chancellor. It was a failed assassination, 5-syllable sort of the whole word. And now he was just here. Doing what? Enjoying a drink.
The Valdez. Indeed. Do you want to give us any description of what he looks like or anything else?
The Valdez is a man who is some would say approaching his 40s, some would say well above that. Of many things that are implaceable about his qualities, his age is one, but he could tell you that he was there, um, that during one of the many tumultuous periods of the moon's history, that he was there to see many of the great events. He would even go so far to say that he orchestrated them, but whether or not you wanted to believe him is up to whoever it is who happens to be listening. Most people think he's a lunatic. Other people think he's just a old armchair leftist past his primes. But those who know him or many of his many numerous titles, some good, some bad, would do well to be wary of the man and hope that any night he might find himself partaking in begins and ends with a cup in his hand and no other object.
Okay, awesome. A veritable Gandalf, as it were, of the plains of Erixon. Not quite as old, but you know, a well-traveled individual. But yes, Valdez has a history with almost every major city in Muldrin, as well as a smattering around the rest of Erixon. And this wasn't the first time that he'd listened to this chancellor speak, and it wasn't the first time that he'd listened to very obvious public politicking. And each time the chancellor makes some kind of statement and he dissects it and processes all of them and observes its effect on the crowd, seeing if maybe a joke lands or something. Each barbed retort or witticism or even outright propaganda pieces that the gaudily robed weasel has in store. Valdez already is thinking of an answer. He's thinking of a rebuttal, a quip to hurl back at this veiled corruption that he sees standing at the podium. And for just a second, his trail of thought loses the speech, and he remembers a time long ago when he heard words just as deceitful as this snake standing on the podium before him. And he thinks back to many years ago. Valdez, a young man stands behind you in a dark warehouse, glistening hot sweat dripping down every inch of his body, and his dark amber skin is backlit by the solo illumination of a forge behind him. He wears a simple white undershirt that's just soaked through from toiling hours in the heat. And you stand in front of him, your head wrappings undone, with serious determination on your face. You are a young man, full of fire and vigor, dealing vengeance and fury on oppression in the name of the freedom of Erixon. Across from you two, an ornate wooden desk with a few lamps illuminates a wall of steel filing cabinets and tall looking safes. And seated at the desk is a smiling man in a silky white suit and a black carbon tie, flanked on either side by two of the largest men you've ever seen that are wearing baggy, kind of ill fitting pinstripe suit jackets. And the grinning figure at the desk runs a hand through his coiffed, dark hair that's flecked with streaks of gray, the corner of his mouth betraying just a glint of a gold cap on his back tooth. And then he speaks, kind of breaking the silence as there's just a quiet sound of the furnace running in the background. And he says, Valdez, I think you know as well as I do that you have only about a week left of strike funds, and then we'll all be back to where we were at the beginning. Arc Welders Union accepts my generous offer, and we resume production on the railway that will build the New West. And he reaches into a small box on the top of his desk and he produces a aromatic, expensive imported cigar, and he lights it with just a gaudy lion statue that's sitting on his desk. Besides, he adds in between puffs on this really just pungent cigar, you and Marchand were never really great negotiators anyway. How many more families have to starve before you bend the knee to your stubborn pride? And the man behind you in the undershirt, Marchand, you can tell he's visibly struggling to control himself at the man's like baited antagonism. But you are calm. You won't take his bait. You speak slowly and deliberately. The Union's pride is what protects it from the boot that seeks to crush us underneath it. We appreciate the counteroffer you've proposed, but our representatives politely decline and resubmit our original offer. 50% of the pay share, reduced work hours, increased safety regulations, and no mandated overtime. And as you say this, your thumb kind of brushes against the chamber of the revolver that's hidden underneath your wrappings, kind of in a nervous, pensive, almost a absent-minded movement. But the huge thug that's on the left somehow sees that motion underneath your garment and starts to roll up one of his sleeves. The man at the desk, whose name is Melsim, he taps his finger on the desk in almost a nervous move, and his eyes kind of dart between you and Marchand behind you, and he kind of is taking in, what your reactions are as he considers what you've just said, your refusal of to back down from this strike that the Arc Welders Union has. The thug on the right, who has a black cravat pinned to his dirty shirt under his jacket, kind of starts to loosen his top button and he starts to take a step forward. But before he can take any more, Melson raises his hands and says, Gentlemen, please, let's not resort to animalistic behavior here. To be frank, I have considered your proposal and I wanted to. And for the first time, his voice falters and his words kind of trail off. A moment of weakness and hesitation, you think. He regains his train of thought and kind of resumes. I wanted to consider a different offer, but I think I unfortunately have to accept. The labor of the Union cannot go to waste, nor is it easily replaced with these scabs. I will agree to your terms on the condition that all further communication comes through you alone, Valdez. And you, Valdez, kind of look back at Marchand and he nods. And in that motion, that symbol, he is naming you in solidarity, the de facto, like unanimous voice of the Arc Welders Union. And you turn back to the scene at the desk and you tip your hat, just kind of in agreement. He places both of his hands on the desk and kind of walks around it gingerly. Good. I will draw up the papers tonight to be ready in the morning for you to sign, as the union, I assume, has already voted on it. A pleasure doing business, Valdez. And he reaches out his hand for a handshake to, in agreement that, both of you are agreeing to this aforementioned contract. There's like a second of pause as his hand extends out to you and you listen to his words just kind of so previously coated with venom are just now you can tell that the months of this strike has weakened his resolve, and finally this is the payoff. This is the moment that you've been waiting for. And you extend your hand and you grasp it with this determination. You know that you've won. Now, finally, all of the the efforts and the anguish and the waiting and the poverty and the frustration of all of these workers is finally not for nothing, as you finally force this guy to reveal his hand, and now he has to come to this table and he has to agree to this thing. And you grasp his hand and you shake it. But the second your hand touches his hand, his grip kind of tightens like a vice, and you can't pull your hand away. And suddenly you look back at his face, and he has a sinister chuckle as he just kind of shakes his head. And suddenly compartments on all of the walls just open, and cameras and microphones are everywhere, and all of these shutters are clicking in 360 degrees as all of these new photos of you shaking his hand and all the sound bites of your words from all these past conversations are suddenly revealing what his plan was the whole time, which was to pin you as the union's spokesperson and manipulate the entire township to make them think that you were somehow in league with him, costing the strike with deliberation the only resource that it had, which was time. And without it, these workers would have to accept their fates that Melsom provided or starve. And Melsom's knuckles just bone white with exertion, just holding your hand in place. His knuckles seem to just crackle as his mocking grin just meets your expression as the severity of that truth just dawns on you, and you kind of slowly lose the ability to stand and sink to your knees a little bit. And you can hear Marchand behind you stifle a sob with his hand in the background as he realizes as well what's happening. And Melson releases your hand and pulls it away with a disdainful look, and he tuts softly, just, poor boy, don't you know this game is rigged? And I hold the wheel. And he makes a circular motion with his index finger. And with that, he spins quickly and he waves to the two thugs. Send everything to the Gazette and the Bugle and the Crier. Tell them to print everything. And those words kind of just echo in your mind as that negotiation gone awry kind of echoes in your mind as we come back to the present, as Valdez is sitting there listening to another one of these politicians just wrap the public around his finger. What is Valdez doing as he kind of um, appears to be not reacting to any of this information, but what is he doing under the surface? What is he watching? What is he thinking?
Valdez has but one thought, the culmination of all of his experiences, his failures mostly. He thinks to himself, there's nothing on this planet worth saving. And if there's one thing that I'm going to do before I touch the sands one last time, I'm going to find OKK. And I'm going to put him down there with me.
All right. And with that, our characters are set. Each of them is staged in their individual positions in this scene. So, as all of our characters are mostly, I think, silently observing the goings on of this festival, this celebration almost of poverty, the mayor kind of like comes back up to the microphone and makes it wheeze and whine again, just not having learned his previous lesson. Just,
Pardon me, I'm sorry. I believe we are ready to announce the winner. Are we not?
and he turns as though he has literally no idea what's going on whatsoever to the chancellor, who just kind of like shakes his head with just a disappointed like, yes, let's get on with it, let's go. And he hands the mayor a small manila envelope that probably has the name of the winner on the inside. um does anyone want to do anything? Does anybody feel like, making an action or talking to someone before this happens, before it happens, during?
Emily kind of like very gently and slowly makes her way up to the front. She's trying to look very lackadaisical, but the ticket that she has in her hand is super super clenched and her palm is sweating a little bit.
What ticket does she have?
The lottery entry.
Ah, yes, it's the receipt of her deposit to the Green Bow. So she has donated. So there's a chance that she could win $150,000.
In her left hand she clutches this receipt, and then her right hand, her hand's kind of shaking a little bit, and her beer is like doing like the Jurassic Park thing where there's like the little just ever so slightly as she like brings it up to her lips.
Okay, sweet. So she makes her way to the front of the crowd.
And she
Uh,
she walks up to a random person also who also is holding a ticket and goes, one time I heard it said that the odds of winning a lottery is kind of like if you had a lizard somewhere deep in the desert and he was going to take a sneeze on one day. Well, you got to guess the exact second in a 10 frame time period that lizard's going to sneeze, and them are your odds that you're going to win.
And the guy that she's standing there talking to just kind of like sits there for a second, kind of absorbing everything that she just said with kind of a almost a stupefied air. You can smell alcohol on his breath. He just, I can do it.
Best of luck to you.
Absolutely, I'm gonna win this goddamn thing.
Yeah, me too.
Amen.
And she cheers him, yeah. Hell yeah.
they clink glasses,
So winning.
To getting the money.
Anybody else?
Heron has pulled back his hood, and he's climbed up onto sticks to make sure that he can get a good look at who just won.
Ah, okay. So he's
He's
kind
gonna
of
tolerate the heat for a few minutes.
all right. He's got to have clear ears. All right. So he's perched. He's ready to listen. He wants to hear that name and remember it and not have to struggle to hear it, because there's definitely going to be people screaming. The crowd is already kind of loud, but it
Well, the face
quiets
is much
down a
more
little bit.
important.
True.
Face is important.
The
He can
face is
remember
also
a
important.
face.
The
He can't
face,
read and he can't write, so he can't look up their name, but he can remember their face.
that is true. Does he want to move any closer?
No.
Okay.
He's tall himself, and he's sitting on something. He doesn't want to draw too much attention to himself on this.
He's got high ground advantage.
He's got high ground advantage.
Awesome. Anybody else?
He's got line of sight.
Bones is keenly paying attention to make triple sure that he doesn't look anything like the winner.
Okay, cool. He's trying to pay attention mostly just because he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to be mistaken for,
Nope, I'm some guy.
somebody rich. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
We absolutely got to be as inconspicuous as possible. Is the
He's
goal,
he's
but
tr- he's turned he's pulled himself into like a shadowy area. He's like turning his face away, kind of covering it with one hand and just keeping an eye open just in an he's ready to turn around and hide in an instant.
just on the off chance.
So one might think.
Okay, all right, cool. Anybody else?
Feel like Valdez is just chilling.
He's chilling. All right. Celine, what are you doing?
Celine is trying not to look like she's enjoying herself. That's mostly it. Trying not to look too happy about the angry crowd.
Gotcha. Okay. Disinterested look. Absolutely. Unaffected. Okay. So, the mayor, hemming and hawing, kind of like clears the mic a little bit, and the crowd quiets down. There's still some murmuring and stuff like that as people kind of whisper to one another, make some last second predictions. There's a guy doing uh probabilities and running very last second, numbers on which person, people might be betting on to think, who is the person that they think might win. But he, kind of struggles to open the manila envelope, just Chancellor Lloyd, would you mind helping me with this? Thank you. And Lloyd, it's oh my God, just tries to tear open the envelope, but then it turns out to be a little bit more difficult than he had anticipated, and he's you know unwilling to accept that he can't open it. So he spends like another uncomfortable like 30 seconds as all of the attention is just watching the podium as the chancellor's like trying to open this weird clasp on the manila envelope that is unnecessarily complicated. And he's like, oh my God, I can't. Wild hot. And he like gets the sheriff to come over, and the sheriff not paying attention at all, does not care, literally not paying attention to the giveaway or the lottery whatsoever. He's literally been looking at the crowd the entire time and almost did not even notice that the giveaway was about to happen. So he kind of snaps back to look at the chancellor and the mayor and goes, oh, all right. And he reaches over, takes the manila envelope and flicks the the little clasp that it has on it. It's like a tough leather manila envelope. It's paper, but it's pretty thick. It's like, thick cardstock. They couldn't rip it open with their dainty hands, but he flicks it real hard with his fingers. He's got gloves on. It just kind of flies open, and he just kind of like gives him this look as he hands it back to the chancellor, and the chancellor takes it back with like an air of embarrassment, and then very formally presents it back to the mayor now that it's open, as if he had done all of the work. And the mayor takes the middle. Thank you, dear boy. I appreciate it. And he pulls the folded piece of paper that's folded a couple times so that people can't peek through the envelope. He pulls it out, and it's got a little drawstring on it with a wax seal. And he opens the wax seal, and he unfurls it a little bit. There's a lot of clearing of throats as people are, trying to stay patient as the proceedings are dragging on longer and longer and longer as everybody's just like the tension is just kind of growing to find out if they were the one that got this life-changing amount of money. And the mayor finally gets the paper open, and he goes, oh, there we are. All right. And kind of readjusts his glasses a little bit. The winner the winner of the Greenbow Citizens Relief Lottery is Jan Folfax. And kind of looks out expectantly at the crowd, and there's some loud groans and people throwing tankards onto the ground. And there's one person that, there's a couple shots, this sucks, just general stuff. People are not very happy. But the reason is not just did people lose, apparently people also kind of know this guy. Let me see. The people that would know. Valdez. I think you might be the only person who would know who Yarn is. So Yarn Folfax is kind of just a minor local businessman, kind of a shifty guy. You see him step up onto the stage, and he's like this balding, very thinning hair. He's got no hair on the top of his skull. It's just, kind of in the back and stuff like that. So he's kind of, thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be selected. And he's, stammering. Nobody can even hear him because the crowd is, suddenly kind of in this uproar, and he's just kind of stammering thank yous to the mayor and everything. But people know this guy as basically almost kind of like as I wouldn't say a dishonest businessman, but he's definitely kind of a shifty character. And the general vibe from the crowd is all of the rest of you guys, besides Valdez, everyone else, Celine, Bones, Emily, and Heron, you guys can tell that the vibe is like pissed. Valdez, you can tell that people are pissed for a reason. This guy sucks. That's about the extent that people have known that this guy sucks in general, but everyone else, all of you, the rest of you, you just kind of generally sense that the crowd is pissed at this.
I turned to the guy next to me and I'm like, ain't it a little bit strange to you how they all public like announced this? Like, ain't that putting some kind of big target on that feller's back? Like, what is it? If someone's gonna look at him, like, what's stopping them going up from him, just like, I don't know, beating him over the head or something?
And as this guy is about to respond in his drunken stupor, two of Sheriff Wildheart's deputies they have like long rifles with like bayonets attached to them. They march the guy up from the crowd, up over to the podium of the stage, and the mayor kind of shakes this guy's hand. Congratulations, Mr. Fofax. Use these funds very wisely. None of this audio is being heard whatsoever because the crowd is just kind of pissed, and some people are throwing a few things. Occasionally there will be maybe like a bottle or something that gets thrown through the air, and the chancellor is using the drones to kind of like manage the crowd a little bit. So he'll like push back, and these drones, they have like these bladed propellers that like move them all around and fly them everywhere. So he's kind of using them to like back the people away from the very front of the stage where the podium is, and he's like, "Thank you very much. Keep back. Thank you very much. Your patronage is appreciated very, very much." And like, a bottle that's thrown through the air, he like kind of like blocks it with one of the drones. He just like lets it chop it up, so like nothing gets past the edge of the stage.
I guess that answers my question. Hey, you should go out there and you should beat that guy upside the head and take his ticket. You're an awful big feller.
I tell I, I tell you what, and then he like vomits in the middle when he's talking. This guy could like barely stand up. Tell you what, if that was me up there, I wouldn't stay in Oxum a single more day. I would leave. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Where you figured you'd go?
Uh, I don't know.
I don't know neither.
That's about the end of the conversation with this guy, because he's not even lost in thought. He's just lost in drink, and he like turns back to another tankard of whatever he has in his hand.
Yeah, I don't know neither.
What is everybody else doing as Imini uh socializes with the local alcoholics?
Celine did not expect everybody to overreact that much and is cracking a big smile and sinking in her chair a bit.
Okay.
Heron is reconcealing his face, partially to keep his anonymity and also just to protect his face from the elements now that he's gotten a good look at this guy.
Okay.
Bones has made a mental note to never take on this guy's appearance.
Okay. Noted.
No thanks.
Don't look greasy. Valdez, what are you doing?
I feel like Valdez. And there's a general commotion going about. Would you say the crowd is dispersing, like, or shifting rather?
They don't show any signs of leaving. They are mostly just kind of milling about. There's a lot of discussion happening. People are immediately erupting in like arguments. There's maybe one or two people, have like a few fists thrown, but there's not any general like uproar or anything that's like violent. It's just mostly people are like mad. People are mad, but they're staying put. They're listening and they're gonna watch this guy go into the bank and cash this check.
Valdez, sort of like he looks at his drink, he checks the levels of his canteen, and then he says, "Yeah, why not?" And he sort of like places the copper cup down with the tokens of payment, and he begins to sort of walk towards the crowd, suddenly interested.
Okay. There is some political discussions going on in the middle of these arguments over who deserves to get cash prizes and things like that. So, uh, you know, anything basically goes when it comes to these kinds of like shouting matches. So, it could be that he's wading into the battleground of ideas, possibly. Does anybody else want to do anything other than just watch the crowd be
Um,
silly?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Celine's gonna probably hop up and try and watch this guy cash this check because it's not something to miss.
Okay, she's got her opera glasses on.
Heron's gonna follow from about 100 feet.
Okay, so he's
Watching
close.
he's watching the crowd move behind him, not him himself. He's not dismounting either.
Okay, so he's not dismounting. He's on sticks. So he goes forward a little bit, but not close enough to where anyone
He's not
would.
pushing ahead.
Yeah, he's not pushing ahead. He's just kind of sticking to the edges, but he's getting a closer look essentially
Yes.
at the goings on. So what happens next is they shake Yarn's hand and he's muttering thank you very much. It's this amount of money will I could even open a new shop. And I think the chancellor's completely disinterested. Sheriff Wildheart is not paying attention whatsoever. He's mostly just shouting at the crowd is, "Hey, quit throwing bottles. I'm gonna have you in the tank." Just pointing out specific members of the crowd because he knows people like general. If there's a rabble rouser that's he knows from experience, he's eyeing them down and warning them ahead of time. He goes, no, he's risk managing before anything happens. He's just you know trying to manage some of the chaos so that it doesn't happen. And then the chancellor is mostly concerned with, because he is the chancellor of like public relations, so he wants the air of the um the event kind of to stay the same. And with that, I can actually show you guys the outside of kind of what the bank looks like. uh this is generally what the bank looks like. There is a large amphitheater in the front. This is only a reference image, but this is generally what the bank looks like, with large ornate pillars, stuff like that. There's iron wrought windows. It's very fancy, very pristine looking. Definitely not similar to the rest of the buildings in New Oxum, because everything else has kind of a grime to it. Even though this city is kind of pretty well protected from the elements, all of the other buildings do kind of look a little bit worn. But the building itself is just like this finely hued, like, some parts of it are marble, some parts are granite. Like, it's very well constructed. But they march through this podium. Sheriff Wildheart and his two deputies, they take Yarn. After he's said his piece, he walks up to the podium a little bit and he gives a few words, but he isn't even able to say even like a single word. He steps up and he's like, "I just run to," and then immediately just a like some like a snack like package or something like that just flies towards his head and is intercepted by one of the Chancellor's drones as it like waves him away. The Chancellor's like motioning to Wildheart to like get him off the stage, take him away, go. And so Sheriff Wildheart says, whatever. He's not concerned with any sort of the imagery stuff. This is all frou-frou for him. So he just motions to his deputies, and they kind of start to walk Yarn into the building. And they make it to the entrance of the bank, and they go inside. And then the crowd kind of quiets down a little bit. There's like not as much arguing, but there's some like grumbling and stuff because people know there will be a little bit of a lull before he comes out again with the check and things like that. And of course, there is the possibility, like Emily mentioned, uh, this guy will get an armed escort back to his house, but it's kind of a free for all after the day ends, you know. So days after the lottery are kind of they're a little bit hectic. Sometimes the winner will dip out of town for a few days to safely deposit their funds or go spend them at a fun destination or something. Or usually they try to do something outside of the city to try and get away from the goings on that kind of happen. But everybody kind of feels that there's definitely like an anticipal air as people are like, ooh, what's gonna happen next? So this is the real entertainment of the festivities. This is what people really came to watch, which is this guy uh gonna get murked the second that he gets back to his house, or is he going to immediately deposit all his money in the bank and then not ever spend a dime? Is he gonna do whatever? So people are just kind of like waiting outside. Does anybody else move around, change position? The crowd, some of them do kind of leave. I would say probably like a quarter of the crowd kind of like peels off. They're not interested anymore. It's some of those weirdos that were only interested in the speeches. They kind of leave from the front of the amphitheater. So it's like 2/3 filled, and the rest of it is just kind of like the outer edges outside of the barricade. Does anybody else move around? What are you guys doing? What are you up to?
How close?
Drunken. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
How close is the bank to the um auditorium, like the speech space or whatever?
So there is the amphitheater, which is like a recessed pit below the bank, which is used sometimes for events and sometimes things like that. It's usually like some like entertainment like venues and things like that. But the podium itself is about 10 feet up like the elevated surface above the amphitheater for, um, audio amplification and stuff like that. And then from the podium behind that, it's about a 50-foot walk, I would say, between the podium and the little walk outside there.
Um and so is this like natural auditory or are there like speakers about?
So there are speakers. They're only set up on the podium, though. But the architecture itself of the amphitheater is designed to allow the maximum amount of people to. Um,
Here?
but it's for the maximum amount of people to be basically naturally hear. If only a person was just speaking with their natural voice. Uh, oh wait, did I not activate this? There we go. There's the bank. You guys didn't even say anything. I thought I
Uh,
activated it. There we go.
I have my camera up, so
Yeah, we're at the bank.
yeah. I reset it for a second. My books were in the same
you're good.
window.
It's cool. I got the theater of the mind going. So I guess my last question is there anyone left at the podium?
So left at the podium are the chancellor and the mayor, and one more of the deputies from Sheriff Wildheart's little um party that he brought from the jailhouse, essentially. So he has one more guard that he left up there. The chancellor is pretty capable at dealing with crowds, really, so they're not really worried about any kind of crowd control or anything like that. But there is one more deputy out there. Just in case. But those are the three guys that are standing out on the podium.
And he deposited his check, right?
We do not know as of yet. They just went into the
Okay.
bank.
I
Like,
want to
let's-
go up there and
What's
approach
the
the
last thing
podium.
he touched? What's the last thing he touched
The last thing who
with
touched?
his hand? This Jan fellow.
Yarn probably touched the podium. Because he put his hands on it and he rested his hands on that wooden podium with the mic on it to say something, didn't get any words in, and then immediately was like rushed away from the stage.
How many other people have touched it since then?
No one so far.
Okay. So I'm going to start making my way towards there as quietly as possible, and I'm bringing a cloth with me.
I'm
Okay.
also walking towards the podium.
Okay, he's walking towards the podium. We got multiple people making their way towards the podium. Celine, Bones, and Imini. What are you guys up to after Yarn enters the bank with Sheriff Wildheart?
Imini is a little drunk, and one of the eye bots has caught her eye. And so she walks up to it and is like, "Hi, little fellow, what's your name?" And starts looking around for like a model number and like a serial number and stuff.
The drone itself is almost perfectly spherical. It has a optical display screen that also has a camera to view on the front, but it's mostly an optical screen as well as a speaker. But it doesn't say anything. It just kind of emits a low hum as the propeller keeps it, bound in place in space. But anytime anyone walks too close, it kind of buzzes directly in their face with the sharp propellers kind of like edging really close to, kind of warn them not to get too close.
"Hi, little fella, calm down." And I just want to start fucking with it. I just want to like inspect it. I don't know. Maybe see if there's any panels or anything on it that like open.
As far as you can tell, you don't see any seams on the drone whatsoever.
Gosh darn, I guess the craftsmanship out here is pretty cool, huh?
And it just kind of regards you and the, 5, 6, 7 other people in your direct vicinity with the same like silent regard. It doesn't say anything.
Are there any of my robot skills I can use to try to steal this drone?
I don't think you could try to steal the drone because you could maybe attempt like a dexterity to try like grab it, but the thing is it would immediately be obvious to the chancellor as they are all kind of at the perimeter of the podium. He's aware of all of the drones and they are all controlled through gestural commands. So he would immediately know if somebody grabbed one of the drones right away.
Cool. I'm drunk. I just want to try to touch the drone.
Okay, so you reach out to touch the drone. Do you have any sort of special skill you want to apply to it at all?
I don't know. I've never played GURPS before. Let me look at my
Okay.
things.
Let me see. I can probably just
I would like to use the vitals on the drone, the groin on the drone.
Do they have those?
that's a hit location. That's a hit location. So it tells you where. If you look in your skills, you can probably look and
I have
see what kind
so
of
many
proficiency
skills.
you might have. However,
Yeah,
Where we
I've
looking?
got engineer in robotics, electrical, electronics,
yeah.
communications.
So I don't think that any of these would help you try and touch the drone, but you can roll for it if you want to use maybe something like robotics.
Yes, I do. How do I
Okay.
do this?
Yeah, you.
What do I
How do I
click? SL,
how do I
RSL?
how do I tell Callie to apply the robotics skill to her check, Celine?
Does she have the
Yes,
robotics
she
I
skill?
does.
do.
All right, so she has mechanics specialized in the robotics skill, which means she can do a normal robotics check on the thing as a mechanics roll. So it's just the normal skill roll. If she didn't have the specialty, it would be different.
I got 10.
Okay. I'm gonna say so before before you rolled, I was gonna say it's at a -3 because A, you're drunk, and 2, this is a highly evasive drone, and 3, this is a technology you have not really encountered before, even though you are very proficient with almost all types of robotics. This is something it's a device that you've never seen before.
Is that noteworthy to me that I've never seen anything like this before?
I don't know. I don't know if it would be noteworthy to you. Also, just to notate to you guys, if you roll a 17 or an 18, which is a 6-6, a 666 or a 665, on your 3d6s, that is like a nat 1, so it's a crit failure, and a 3 or a 4, so 3 ones or a 1 and a 2, those are always crit successes. So that's like a nat 20. Just to give you
Ooh,
guys,
that's right. So it's low is better.
yes, low is better. You want to roll underneath.
Like,
High is
oh,
bad.
I got a
It's
10.
it's 3d6, so it's 3 to 18, so it's 1 to 15, and your skill level is pushing how dangerous it is to roll a high number. Gives you kind of safer room to roll shitty.
Gotcha. I got a
Okay.
10. What did that do?
You did get a 10. So that means even with my -3 that I was imposing, you still succeed. So you can reach out and touch the drone. So it's going to make like a little bit of an evasive action, but you already kind of predict the way that the robot is going to move. Because even though you haven't seen this before, and even inebriated, you know that this kind of robot is going to have some kind of stabilizing system. So you kind of tease it into moving forward by putting your hand behind it and play around with it a little bit, just kind of like moving it around. And then you touch it and tap it directly on the optical screen. Um,
Boop.
and you do, you boop,
Accurate.
you boop the drone, and immediately the chancellor looks at you and his attention is focused on you.
I wave at him. Howdy.
And he kind of regards you with this, uh, just like a little bit of a disdainful air. You're a drunk girl in the crowd who just touched one of his PR drones. Um, and he kind of like, um, makes like this, not a sneering face, but almost just like a self-satisfied face, and he makes a flourish with one of his hands, uh and he's looking directly at the drone, which targets which drone he's going to use, and it immediately drops a small pellet that starts to just kind of like fizz and smoke, and it's like this gross, like acrid smelling. It doesn't make like a huge like plume of smoke, but it's enough to where it smells bad, almost like smelling salts that people use. So it's this gross smell that people kind of want to vacate. So people start kind of like backing away and coughing. It's not pepper spray or anything, but it's just like this gross little repellent that he drops out of the drone to kind of get people to back away. Callie, do you move?
I'm deciding if I want to do some fuckery.
You should do some fuckery.
You can do some fuckery. You are completely entitled to.
Cool. When it drops the thing, can I try to stick a screwdriver into the little thing that opens to let it out?
Let me see how I would interpret that. I'm gonna say yeah, but I'm gonna do a quick little thingamadoodad to see how I would what kind of skill I would calculate for that.
And it's funny. It's like when you got a cat that's yawning, so you stick your finger in his mouth and it gets all bothered.
Okay. I'm going to say, let me see. Okay. Oh, that did actually exactly what I wanted, which is a -4 roll versus your dexterity, which is 12. I didn't mean to roll that for you. I meant to send it to you, but that still works. I rolled your dex 12 for a -4.
That was an accident. Yeah.
You
Kill
are.
me.
I was going to do a health check next, but for the time, just for the purposes of this, Celine, you are out of the range of that gross little nasty pellet. You're kind of off to the side, maybe about
Awesome.
15, 20 feet off to the side away from the podium. But Imini, you try to you have one of your screwdrivers already prepped as you see the drone kind of make this little action, and you try to jam a screwdriver like up into the hatch of the drone to try and see if you can um wedge it open to stop it from shutting so you can like take a peek in it.
What
um
else are you hiding up there?
but the drone dodges out of the way at the last second. Like when it sees your screwdriver, you're not as dexterous as the move that allowed you to kind of touch it, and it's kind of like adapting to the the boldness of the crowd around it, so it knows that it needs to take more evasive action, so it moves out of the way at the last second so you don't get the screwdriver in. What I want you to do also is you're not moving from the little repellent like
No, I'm
the
drunk. I
gas.
don't notice it until too late.
Oh no, so it's not that it doesn't bother you, it's that you didn't notice it in time.
Yeah, I just kind of yeah. I just saw a thing open. And I'm like, ooh. I thought it was a firecracker is dropping, but ain't never
Okay,
popped.
I am going to do just a straight check. Can you roll directly against your health
Health,
attribute,
health,
please?
health, basic,
So
clean,
it'll be basic attributes on the top left, so strength, dex, int, and health.
er,
9 success, made it by 1. Okay, so in that, what you feel as this gross gas kind of like enters your lungs is you begin coughing, but you realize that it's like starting to affect you, so you do move out of the way and you back up about 5 or 6 feet or so out of the range of this small little pellet, and it kind of just like fizzles out, so the smoke is no longer there, so it's not out anymore.
let me ask you one more thing, and then I'm done fucking around.
Sure.
Did my screwdriver attempt to scratch it, or in any way leave a mark on it that I would be able to identify later?
Nope. So you missed it. You
Okay.
missed it by about 5. So your screwdriver plumb missed that drone, went straight up in the air, and the drone just kind of swiftly sidestepped you. So you didn't even make a nick on it anyway.
All right, I'm bored with this. And she
I
just sort
will
of saunters away.
I will give you a little into it from that tiny tap that you gave on the drone. You don't think that your screwdriver would have made a scratch on the drone. These are pretty hardily constructed. These are dense.
Strange little critters.
Mhm. Lightweight, but super durable material.
Wonder how he makes them.
Imini is frolicking with the drones. Anyone else want to do some nonsense while we're at it?
So while that conundrum was going on, how sort of attention grabbing was it?
Good, same question.
Um, I would say for the most part, it really only took like a second for the chancellor to see Emily react and then deploy the pellet and then return his focus on what was happening with the crowd and paying attention to people like looking at the mayor and things like that, talking with the mayor a little bit, not really having a conversation, but he's mostly focused on the crowd while Sheriff Wildheart is away. So really his attention was only distracted for maybe like 2-3 seconds.
How many other drones are there?
Um,
Just like total?
in total, I would say if you're just looking up into the sky, I would say probably ballpark. I would say probably you could probably count maybe like 15, 18. They're just kind of buzzing around. Not all of them are like focused on the crowd. Some of them have like they look like they're doing more of like a eye in the sky kind of like general surveillance kind of thing, just like slowly rotating around and looking. Looks like maybe they're scanning or doing some kind of function like that.
Okay. I think the Valdez wants to approach the steps, the podium, like formally get on the stage and try and grab the mic.
Okay. All right. So, what I would like is in those few seconds of distraction, um, gee, I would like you to go ahead. Let's see if you have a skill to apply to it. Do you have stealth, G? Do you know? You do have stealth. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and roll that at a. Let me see if I can send you the modifier real quick.
I would also like to do something to see if I notice
Well,
him.
hold on.
My
Hold on.
whole thing is that I'm not even necessarily trying to stealth my way up there. I feel that for the purpose of me really wanting this to happen, it is within the Valdez's interest to be as overt and clear of movement as possible so as to communicate no ill harm.
Okay, so your movement is like slow and deliberate, but you're not intending on stopping, essentially.
Yeah.
Acrobatics?
I wouldn't say it's acrobatics. What I will
I just know stealth is also
The
DS.
Valdez is hoping that like he will be engaged with uh on a talking level rather than apprehended physically.
Okay, so you're hoping to just calmly approach the stage and walk on while people are not next to the podium because the mayor and the chancellor are a little bit off to the side. They don't want their conversation like on a hot mic or anything. So
Yeah.
they are kind of off to the side, but you just want to approach from the other side and just kind of slowly try to walk onto the stage.
You know, sometimes the most sneaky thing you can do is not be sneaky. You know what I mean?
This is true. So he's going to go for the innocuous approach then.
Right.
Okay. Then what I will have you roll. Na, 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 na,
Also, I
na.
want to know if I see him going up there.
You are not paying attention, Emily. If you saw somebody walking around, they would just appear to be another person to you. I think you're way more interested in the robotics and some of the there's like display screens and stuff like that the drones are showing and things like that. They have like statistics and things like that. So they have all kinds of other stuff that I think you would be paying more attention to than that. G, what I will have you roll then, you have a skill called body language. So what I will do is I will have you roll that. Let me see. Okay, I'm going to add a -1 modifier just because it's a relatively guarded area. There's no person here restricting you from walking up to the podium right now. Sheriff Wildheart is inside. The other deputy is kind of watching the other side of the podium and relying on the chancellor to um, kind of do that. Okay, so G, actually G, you know what? Can you do it? So it's persuasion.
Persuasion.
Yeah, so you're going for a calm body language. Okay, you made it by 5. Okay. So, you make it all the way up to the steps of the side. Do you like what are you doing with your arms, your body, your stance? Like what are you doing exactly?
Smile on my face. I'm not trying to hide my appearance. Palms open, very deliberately approaching the podium with my eyes on the mic.
Okay. Are your hands at your sides? Are they up? Are they down? Are they you doing gestures? Are you still?
I feel like the Valdez in this moment is like drunk, or putting on a show of being drunk and sort of jovial, sloshing just a little bit. And it is more of an act than it is like authentic.
Perfect. Okay, so he's kind of this unassuming. He's playing like, "Oh, I'm a drunk guy coming up on the stage or whatever."
I'm a
So you,
harmless little
yeah,
guy.
he's a harmless little guy. I'm just a little guy. Cool. Okay, body language -4. All right, all right, all right. Cool, cool, cool. In that case, what I'm gonna do is you are gonna get all the way on top of the podium, not on top of the podium, on top of the what did I call it? The stage?
Correct, I believe.
Yeah, the stage. Okay, cool. So you're gonna get on top of the stage, but one of the drones is gonna notice you. Um,
It's cool.
all right. So I'm going to have you roll another body language. And this one is going to be -2. So if you pass this check, then you can proceed, probably most likely, to the podium itself.
I feel in this moment that the Valdez is more so like he notices the robot is like basically the drone is placing itself in front of him, and he's like, Chancellor, Chancellor, come on, let me speak.
Oh, so you're speaking to the Chancellor himself.
He seems to be the one in control of public relations and whatnot.
Okay.
And at this moment, he is very much going to start engaging in some deception.
Okay. All right. So actually, then in that case, the drone is just kind of like hold its position. At first, the Chancellor does not get held by your attention. Like he just hears people shouting in the crowd, whatever. But then he hears your voice coming from much closer than the rest of the crowd and kind of from a direction he didn't expect. So he turns his head and he sees you on the stage. Um, and what I want you to do is just do a flat actor check. So you have a skill called
Awesome.
actor. So let's roll that and see how that goes. You got to make it under a 10, I believe. Okay, you've made it by a 9. All right, cool, cool, cool. So, the way that the Chancellor responds is he regards you with almost just like looking through you. You are another drunkard. You are literally just another, not a troublemaker, but just a rabble rouser, kind of another nothing in the blip of this complicated event that he's trying to plan out the rest of in his head and do all these calculations and make sure all the publications are getting done. And you are interrupting his conversation with the mayor. And he just turns to the deputy to the side of him and he says, "Can you deal with this, please?" And
And
turns back to his conversation with the mayor.
but that's when I sort of raise my voice and begin to engage and utilize my history with the man, because what he doesn't know is that I've studied him and that I've been as close to him as shoulder to shoulder at one point in my life. And then I say, "Oh, please, I know I've fallen on hard times, but don't you have a heart for your old friend Benicio? What about all those times at the ministry? I know this is your day as much as anyone else. I just want to say one thing, just one moment, to perhaps bring a bit of order to my compatriots here. Have a heart? No?"
And he hears you when you say the name Benicio. He turns back to you, but rather than speak directly and try and shout over this crowd so that you can hear him, he hasn't even directly spoken to you just yet. But what he does instead is two or three more of the drones kind of cluster all together, almost like a little bit of a swarm. And that now instead of being static, they're like making a little bit of like a weaving movement as they kind of like place themselves in between you and the podium, but also you and the chancellor and the mayor also. And the deputy kind of like he looks to be kind of like a newish guy. He's not super old. He's maybe like 19. And he kind of steps forward a little bit and goes, "Uh, all right, it's time to go. Let's get off the stage." And he kind of, you know, unthreateningly like brandishes his bayonet a little bit, but it's like pointed up in the air, and he's not an imposing figure at all. But the chancellor, when he clusters these drones together, he looks at you and you can tell he's looking at you through these drones. And instead of speaking over the crowd to you, he speaks through the drones, which are like a foot or two from your face. And all you hear him say is, "Who are you?"
So much for old friends, eh? Ha! You get promoted and suddenly forget who put you there, whose back you stood upon. And he turns to the crowd and says, "Look at what you all efface yourselves to. You are all cretins, as just as much as everyone else here. I tell you what." And then he goes, waiting here for a lottery when you could take it all by your own hands.
And the natural architecture of this amphitheater, you don't even need the mic. And I think you know this too.
Yeah.
You mostly are using the stage as like an elevation for attention and stuff. And it seems like if you just ignore this deputy, it might buy you a few more minutes even on the stage, because he probably won't be, brave enough to do anything. But you say these words and you hear some of these people that are engaged in this, violent discussion about, politics and money redistribution and who deserves to be winners and how this is distributed, how it's not fair, and all these other, ongoing discussions that are all happening simultaneously. And you feel a lot of eyes suddenly swivel towards you as the words that you're speaking kind of resonate with the heart of their argument. Even people like that are diametrically like opposed on different sides of these discussions, kind of, they feel what you're talking about. I want you to make a public speaking roll with a +1.
Do we innately catch this, or can we
So
perception
if
in there?
you are paying attention to the stage, Emily would hear it, Bones would hear it. Actually, yeah, everybody would hear it if they are paying attention essentially to anywhere adjacent to the stage. If you were like off to the side or something and like only looking at the bank, then you may have like not heard all the words he was saying, but you can tell somebody new is speaking. So it would have been, you wouldn't have caught what he said, but somebody new is speaking.
Can I roll just to see how we're responding? I have a perception skill.
Okay. Okay. So every you guys all have perception, but I think you can just roll for it as well, and there might be bonuses. So it's under secondary attributes on your skill sheet.
Observation, search, and tracking all default to -5 perception. So there's basic perception checks that you can say, and then there's like roll this.
Let me decide the DC for that. What would the DC be for you guys? So what are you guys trying to perceive per se? Just like listening to what he's saying?
I'm just seeing if I roll really good and see some crazy shit starting to go down. No one's tried to rouse the crowd yet.
Okay. I mean, like, I don't think we.
Yeah. I'm also I have enough like empathy stuff going on that I kind of pick up enough off other people. I'm just, if it's a close enough number to be like, hey, Lily notices something, then you're like, all right. But if it sucks, she's completely oblivious and watching the bank.
So I will, because you rolled, Tara, I will say as just a small bonus, because you also cleared it by quite a bit. I will say that you notice that Valdez does not appear to be as inebriated as he is trying to make out. He may be inebriated, but he is very well spoken. So you are notating all of like the complexities of his speech that he's making. He's making a very targeted, um, emphatic, like ideological speech as well. So that's something that you pick up, and you can kind of feel the tense nature of the crowd. The vibe shifts a little bit from like frustration at the winner and all of this other stuff happening to, for the first time, a lot of them are kind of unified in, this is a person we've never seen before. This is something, they're speaking our language. It's not just, it doesn't feel like pandering, right? So that's how it feels for you.
Are the guards at the bank doing anything different, or are they still doing their
in
job?
Total, only about 2.5 minutes have passed since they went inside the bank.
In terms of the remote stuff, the chancellor's at least doing.
Oh, you mean the drones?
Yeah, remote possibility that there's some remote communication. If there's nothing changing, then nothing's changing. It's been 2 minutes was not confirmation.
Yeah, as far as you can tell, not a whole lot has happened. They went into the bank and people are talking. There's just a bunch of general milling around, and then you guys, if you were paying attention, you could hear what G was saying. If not, then you kind of just saw a drunk guy get up on the stage and start talking. David, what were you going to say?
I was gonna say, did G notice me approaching the podium as well?
You were trying to remain undetected, correct? Okay.
I was. But wouldn't you have to
Yes,
roll
I
for
was
that?
gonna say if you were trying to remain undetected, let's roll your stealth versus G's perception. So just straight roll. It's right underneath Desert Tracker. Perception is up at the top in secondary attributes.
Okay.
Now, how do I make a roll for that?
You should be able to just click on the number, I believe.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Valdez rolled a 9 and Heron rolled a 8. Essentially, I'm taking the difference by what you made. You made the stealth check that was a DC 15,
Okay.
and you made it by 7. So what I'm judging that
Okay.
by is even though Valdez, his perception is 13, he only made the difference between the DC for his perception by 4. I'm going to say that because you made it by 7, because your skill cap is higher because you have like a +4 to stealth, you made the difference by 7. So essentially you have like a 3 plus in terms of like success versus his perception, if that makes sense. So as G is making his way up to the stage, he could have noticed you, but what he would have had to do is basically stop, turn around, and scan the edges of the shadows in order to be able to see you. He did not do that because he was literally walking directly forward, not paying attention to directly what was like behind him. So you were also sneaking up to the edge of the stage. I would say during this time period of like 1 minute or so, maybe 40 seconds of G making his way up onto the stage. You've made it all the way. And I'm pretty sure you and G were on the same side of the stage, right? Because you picked the stage opposite from where the chancellor and the
The back of the
yeah,
crowd,
so the
yeah.
the deputy, the chancellor, and the mayor were on one side of the podium. I'm assuming you went with on the same side as G and went to the opposite side. So the podium was a little bit more unguarded.
Yes.
Okay.
Did he touch the
No, so G
podium?
has not made it to the podium. He just started speaking.
Okay.
So now there
Didn't
is
touch the
G,
microphone.
the deputy, the 3 drones, and all of them are in between you and where the podium is. And G is now giving a speech.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna turn my attention to G then,
Okay. What do you want to do?
and keep an eye on what
Oh, you're
he's
just gonna
doing. I'm going to. I'm gonna wait for him and the deputy to clear away a little bit from the podium, and then I'm gonna make an attempt to wipe it and see if I can pick up any sweat.
Okay, so you want to pick up like fingerprints and sweat too? Or just sweat?
Just sweat.
Oh, okay. I
Just
see.
sweat.
I see. I see. I see. Okay. Cool. All right, so you're just watching G. You're like waiting for an opening, maybe? Is that how you
I'm waiting for an opening to try and pick something up from
Okay.
the podium.
All right. Cool. Let me see. Celine, Imini, and Mario. What are you guys doing?
Bones was probably just about to slink off and then noticed that there was a new speaker and is now trying to pay attention to what they're saying.
Okay. Does he move any further into the crowd? Does he do anything, or does he just stand and watch where he was?
He's just going to keep standing and watching from where he was.
I kind of slowly approach and I'm like, "Hey, wait a second. I think I know that feller." And so he catches my attention and I come up to start listening to what he's saying.
Okay, so you're in the crowd listening.
But I want to get like kind of right up close to him. I want to get like pretty much as close as possible without being conspicuous.
All right, so
But also I'm a little drunk, so
outside of the range of the stink bomb. but still
Yeah.
within earshot of listening to what
Mhm.
Valdez is saying. Okay.
Most of my attention is going to be switching to everybody considering the plausibility of rioting. That's taking my full
Okay.
focus
So
for the big stuff. I'm nearby it, but my attention is
you're
entirely
you're like
switched away.
preparing for the idea of like unrest then.
Shit might hit the fan, and I'm excited.
Okay. That's awesome. Sweet. Okay. G begins, he makes his speech. He says all of this stuff. He starts to, excite the crowd a little bit. People start crowding in a little bit more. Emily, you feel like a little bit of the crush of the crowd as people start to get closer to hear what Valdez is saying. What he's saying is like it's not intoxicating, but it's everyone's kind of entranced by what he's saying. The things he has touched on are like kind of the heartbeat of the frustrations of New Oxum. He knows these people. He knows what they're going through. That's what they're feeling right now. Um, Bones, you feel the crowd kind of recede away from you, and they are moving towards the podium. So if you stand still, you are kind of left a little bit by yourself. Do you want to move forward or anything? Because now the position that you're standing in is like a far back from the crowd, and you are kind of like a solitary figure.
Oh, does Bones understand that like a riot is about to break out?
So it's not necessarily that a riot is about to break out. Celine, Tara's character, has um, she's like using a little bit of insight to maybe infer that because
Hmm.
there's political speeches going on, um, there could be a possibility of people losing their shit. It's not to Bones, it's not any different than the air that people had when um, other speakers were talking. You just hear people being interested in what's being said, and then they move forward up to the stage, and now you're among the stragglers. It's like four or
Got
five
it.
people that are all standing quite far apart from each other.
Yeah, in that case, Bones is just gonna go with the flow here and try and not stay somewhere completely isolated. He'll kind of look up and be like, "Oh," and just almost mindlessly with the crowd go forward.
Okay. So Celine is drinking in the possible distress of the citizenry. Imini is pressing forward to get a closer look at Valdez's face and listen to what he has to say. Um, Heron is kind of like pressing forward and putting himself in an advantageous position to listen, but also maybe in a more position where he could approach the stage if he saw an opening. So, G. Valdez, it sounds like the onus is upon you. The chancellor is not really concerned with what you are saying. He's more concerned with the reaction of the crowd. And as people kind of start to press forward, his attention is diverted slightly. Um, and the eye in the sky drones kind of slowly start to descend and begin to mill around in a circular figure just over the reach of the crowd, maybe about 8 or 9 feet off the ground, and begin to it looks almost like they're like searching faces. So they're like starting to like look around a little bit. Valdez, how do you react? The chancellor has not said anything.
There's a lull in the crowd as sort of all these shifts, these very various movements that Valdez is sort of like, as a public speaker, has been very much trained to keep an eye on. And he knows and he feels in his heart that he almost has them within his grasp, but there's still just a little bit more. He could back down now, and this could be just a little thing, and he probably wouldn't even be arrested or have a word to say with the chancellor. But this has been a very boring month for the Valdez. And he feels in this moment, he looks to the chancellor so disinterested, and he says to the crowd, "Do you see this man? Do you see what he represents? These eyes all in the sky watching us, pushing us about, pelting us with these stink bombs." He pauses and he says, "If you want to change your station, if you want life to be just a little bit better than what it was yesterday, if you would like to leave this god-forsaken planet, you will grab the nearest rock, and all you have to do from there is throw it." He sort of yells out that last line.
And on Rock, the Chancellor's eyes are firmly on you, Valdez. He's looking directly at you. And now it's not any sort of expression of antipathy, it is a full on glare.
I wink at him.
I want you to make a perception check for hearing. Real quick, if you can
It's
do that.
pretty hard of hearing.
Missed it by -1. I was actually going to add a minus modifier before you did that, but you did miss it over the crowd. If you had heard it, you would have heard him say something to the mayor, but you see him mouth something and he says something to the mayor and he makes a gesture. And suddenly, probably 7 more of the drones come swarming onto the stage and form like a horizontal, 2 horizontal lines, probably like 3 foot and 6 foot off of the ground. And they kind of just like slowly advance towards you. And you can hear him shout to the deputy, just get him off the stage. And he gestures to the drones and they start to slowly kind of make almost like a semicircle that kind of like bars you off from moving to the rest of the stage, and just kind of slowly moves forward so that you will be like slowly moved either to the edge of the stage or completely back towards the stairs. And the um sheriff's deputy kind of like says, yeah, yes sir, and kind of lowers his bayonet a little bit and goes, all right, move you, and prods you just a tiny bit in the flank, not enough to like hurt you or anything, but just like a get moving kind of gesture. And the drones kind of move forward.
Dang, I almost wish he did like draw blood or something. That would have been very useful as a symbol.
The PR manager is a very shrewd guy.
The Valdez knows this. He has experiences.
You thought those bayonets were sharp? They're made of rubber. No, they're not. They're not made of rubber.
Right. Okay, so the Valdez looks at the reluctant crowd and says, he sort of yells and says, "If you would need a martyr, then let me be him." And he basically just haphazardly runs at the sheriff, screaming riot all the sheriff deputy screaming riot all the while.
The sheriff's deputy, as a reaction, screams and drops his weapon.
I want to intervene.
You want to intervene? What would you like to do, Emily?
I want to run up to the Valdez and go, "Oh, honey, I've been looking for you everywhere. You've been hitting the drink a little hard tonight, ain't you? Come here, baby."
You're shouting this at the base of the stage, so like, but everyone in the vicinity can hear you.
Yeah, just trying to get up to the Valdez.
Okay.
I've been looking for you around here everywhere. Where have you been? Are you causing a ruckus? Come on, let's get out of here.
And with that, I would say that G, you might be like your shrieking cry of, revolution and stuff like that. The drones haven't moved position, but I would say it might startle you a little bit that this girl, instead of doing, something riotous, instead immediately runs up and starts talking to you. Also, the sheriff's deputy has dropped his weapon and the drones have kind of rotated to, so now you guys are kind of close to the stairs. Also, I just want to point out to Heron that There is a little bit of an opening up to the stage.
No one's paying attention to it
No,
right now,
okay, so
right?
everyone's attention is on G. So it would be directly on G for the next few seconds. And the drones are all focused on him or milling around the crowd. And the deputy just dropped his weapon.
Okay, I'm gonna make a go for it. I'm gonna take my cloth and try and wipe
All right, so
the
you're riding
podium.
sticks right now?
No, I'm not. No, I left him back there.
Oh, he's back at the back of the crowd. Okay, so you're just gonna walk. Let
Yes.
me give Tara a quick info dump real quick. So right now, Tara, this is the split second where G, his character Valdez, has just made some kind of declaratory revolutionary statement. He's saying we gotta throw bricks, we gotta throw rocks, we're gonna kick shit up, we're gonna do things, right? Um, which isn't necessarily that's a 2.
Wow.
I don't even know what that does.
That's gonna trigger Horner. That is under 5. That is bad. All right.
All right, do you want to describe what happens at the simultaneous moment that Heron makes a dash for the stage?
What's my range from the stage at the bank?
Right now you are I think previously I described your little umbrella pavilion as about 15 feet away to off to the side from the crowd, so it's outside the barricade. So I would probably put you at about 20 to 30 feet away from the actual stage itself.
Oh, range. How do we do that?
Okay. Do you want to calculate that? And I'm going to
Yeah.
figure out. Okay, so David, Taryn is now. Is he
Yes.
sprinting towards the stage?
No, he's moving at like a
Okay,
quick
so he's
walk.
moving at a quick walk. I would say,
He wouldn't be much further. I mean, I don't think he'd be like less than 10 feet behind you.
okay, so he takes the exact second of when that kind of cacophony happens to slip in between where G, the drones, Imini, and the deputy are, and he makes it all the way up to the podium. The chancellor immediately notices you and goes, "Get off the stage!" And he makes a finger motion with his index and middle finger up at his temple, and he goes, "Wildheart, you are needed. Get out here now."
Okay. I'm gonna make an attempt to look like I stumbled and plant my hand on the podium.
Okay. I'm going to say a +1. I'm going to send it to you and then just roll that, and it should add the +1.
Right. I think.
You totally make it. And you plant your hand with your cloth on the podium. And then what kind of a movement do you make after you get it?
Uh, I'm gonna make a slip like I fell and sit on the
Sit on
stadium
the stadium? Okay. Can you just do
next to the
another
podium. Like I fell and
okay, can you just do another
yeah,
flat acrobatic?
like I fell on my ass.
Okay. Made it by 6. Okay, so now you're sitting on the edge of the stage with the cloth full of sweat in your hand. Tara,
Okay.
what do I do as far as the chancellor?
I just tried something that rolls at a -10, but there's a default. I think it said.
I love GURPS so much.
I made it at a -6 and I made it by 1. What happens when you tie?
I'm not sure, actually.
That's meeting the difficulty class.
Yes. If you tie with a DC, yes, you have to
Yeah.
roll the DC or lower. So that means a success.
Yo,
What have you so secretly succeeded on?
that was steel energy on the chancellor.
Okay. So what is exactly does that do?
That is 1 FP per second.
1 FP per second for what?
So as long as I maintain concentration, stealing it
Okay.
and raising my 2 because it's compulsive.
All right. Sounds good. So, at the exact same time, G makes this statement. Valdez is shouting about revolution. Imini rushes up to the stage and immediately starts what it looks like to, I would say, probably to Valdez, is either she's a drunk girl who's mistaking him for someone else or desperately trying to get him out of the situation and inadvertently kind of deflating some of the uh, impact that his speech has had by making him look like a drunken sod. At this exact same moment as well, um, Heron rolls up onto the stage, stumbles, takes a trip, plants his hand on the podium, and just kind of like falls and bounces down until he's sitting kind of awkwardly on the edge of the stage. Celine, what would you say the physical reaction is from you?
I don't really have to do anything. I just have to concentrate. So as long as I'm not distracted by anything besides the things I'm focusing on, I
Okay,
can
so
do it.
physically, what is like Celine doing? Like, how does she appear? If someone was to just glance at her, what does she look like she's doing?
Discreetly, probably staring a little bit too much at the
Okay,
chancellor, but until he does anything weird, it's just obviously watching what is clearly a conundrum and
okay, she's
catastrophe.
locked on the slow motion car crash that's happening directly in front of her.
Yeah, it still looks
Okay,
normal for
so
now.
I will say the reaction for Celine. The Chancellor immediately starts to double over, and he feels like this. It looks like he's like not convulsing, but he suddenly has like an expression on his face of just like bewilderment.
It's supposed to feel good for a second, and then if it takes too much, they notice.
Okay, so nobody would have noticed a pleasant reaction in the chaos of what is going on. The only thing that you guys will see is that the chancellor is now making wild looks around the crowd, and trying to rapidly stare at everyone, as all of this cacophony is going on. Not really anything nondescript is going on because with him, because there is literal chaos starting to erupt. Bones, you see this happening at the front of the stage. You're kind of back at the back of the cluster that Imini is in. So she's at the front of the stage, and you're at the back of the cluster. Probably like 30, 40 people are in the middle of this clump. What is Bones doing necessarily when all of this goes down?
I mean, I don't really know. I don't think he's doing much of anything. He's probably just very confused. He's definitely not like picking up any rocks to throw.
Okay.
But right now he's just trying to observe and take in as much as possible. He all he needs right now is information. He just rolled into town, like either today or in a very short time from now.
Hmm.
So he's just trying to perhaps analyze the situation and try and understand what's going on.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to roll a contest, Tara?
I think that was my skill roll because yeah, that's changing it. So I just need his
His
will.
will? Okay. It is 13.
Am I rolling against 13 then?
If it's a contest, then isn't that how it works?
If it's a contest, I'm not sure if he also rules, but I think it's against 13, then
Okay,
whatever.
we'll
Yeah.
say that it's not a contest because it was completely unexpected and basically during a split second where everyone was distracted. So we will say that it is not.
Yeah, I just more if it's a quick contest, are we rolling his stat also, like we did for G earlier?
Yeah, I'm gonna rule that it's not. We're gonna say that it's not a contest. It's unresisted.
Solid.
So all of this unfolds in the matter of literally less than 3 minutes after Sheriff Wildheart enters the bank with Yarn and his two deputies. As David bumps down onto the stage, Heron sits down on the edge. Celine is glancing at the Chancellor and making not if he was looking at her, she would be making very fierce eye contact. Valdez is looking a little bit confusedly at this very young girl that is now talking to him as though she knows him, and he's racking his brain through the library Rolodex of all the people that he's ever known if she is in there. And he's like, the wheels are still turning, the tumblers are spinning. There's no recollection of who this girl is whatsoever. Emily, I don't know what her deal is. She immediately walked up to a stranger while she is drunk and is trying to, she could be trying to flirt, she could be trying to just be a nice person. Who knows what her motivation is? Bones is sitting at the back of the crowd watching all of this unfold, and Heron basically just made out with a very, very tasty little prize. So people are starting to get what they came for. At the exact same moment that the Chancellor is about to say something and speak, the doors to the bank blow open and a huge loud noise erupts from inside the bank. Yarn and one of the deputies and Sheriff Wildheart sprint outside, and immediately Sheriff Wildheart says, "Shit's fucked. We gotta go." And before anyone can take a reaction, Wildheart, the Chancellor, the Mayor, any of you guys, the front wall of the bank collapses. And what you guys see proceeding as every other action is interrupted. No one else does anything as their attention is arrested on the front of the bank because the noise is so loud. And you see a giant drill puncture through the front door and the wall of the bank, standing at about probably 10 feet high, and an armored vehicle with a huge, what looks to be a mining drill, busts through the front door of the bank. And there's a little hatch on the top that pops open, and a small coal-covered man wearing a mining hat, a helmet with a little lamp. He's covered in dust and he has a huge mustache. And he begins to rummage around inside of this drill, and he says, "It's time for you to give over what belongs to the miners." And
Valdez screams, "Yeah! Yeah!"
Valdez screams, "Yeah." And that is where we will end our session for today.
Woo!
Fucking super drill. Oh my god. That's incredible.
Man, I love terrorism.
We do, in fact, love terrorism.
Okay, base.
That's all that I had.
Mr.
For you
President, a
guys.
second drill has struck the bank.
Second drill struck the bank. Bro, no.
The drill has struck the north wall.
Oh, man. That was all for this episode of Tales from Arexon IX. You can join our Discord, check out our social media, and everything else in the links that'll be put in the description. And once again, thanks for listening.